Now, I know a lot of folk have been debating the outcome of Terrence Bud Crawford's bout versus Israel Madrimov, and although many arguments can be made about a lot of things, the fact of the matter is this: it was a tough competitive bout where most of, if not many, questions were answered. Like, why is Crawford fighting a guy with only 11 fights? Is Crawford too small for the 154-pound division? And can Madrimov actually pose a threat to who most believe is the best pound-for-pound boxer today? I'm sure we all have different opinions as well as we do share some of the same, but at the end of the day, most of those questions were answered and the two fighters went out there and delivered. We all got our money's worth, and if anyone was disappointed by that outing, I'll be the first to tell you, you shouldn't be watching boxing, bro. You might as well go pro MMA or some shit because you obviously don't understand the ins and outs of this thing we call the sweet science. The newsflash here is that if you were just expecting Crawford to walk through this guy and make light work of Madrimov, then you clearly didn't do your homework and completely overlooked the guy many of you thought was a cherry, because on August 3rd, Israel Madrimov not only proved that he's a player at the 154-pound division, he not only clarified why some of you who are now contradicting yourselves anticipated this to be a better fight than Crawford's undisputed bout with Spence, or even Crawford's toughest test to date. But Israel Madrimov showed us all why he was the WBA super welterweight champ going into this fight, and why styles do indeed make fights. I'll have to say that again for the ones in the back who are hard of hearing. Styles make fights. And although Crawford got the nod from the judges in a unanimous decision, since Bud has stopped every opponent he's faced in the last 8 years, many fight fans will consider that an L by default if you're Crawford. And although I can understand that point of view, I think a lot of you are forgetting. This was Crawford's first appearance at the 154-pound division. This was Crawford's first fight in over a year. Crawford ended up having to wear Grant gloves when he intended to wear his Everlast gloves. Crawford was already the naturally smaller man moving up, and just because Bud didn't get the stoppage doesn't mean that it's okay to overlook the fact that Madrimov, the naturally bigger guy, couldn't stop Crawford either. And oh, were both of them eating some leather in those middle to late rounds. I know Sergio Mora said the 12th round was the only round where Bud hurt Madrimov, but he clearly didn't see that body shot that hurt Madrimov at the end of the 6th round, or that combination that made Madrimov clinch Crawford in the last 55 seconds of the 8th round. A badass 8th round that to me was probably the best round of the fight. An 8th round that Madrimov actually won. Now, it's no surprise to me why Eddie Hearn went on his rant after the fight and why he was trying to call judges out for scoring the bout unanimous to Crawford. As I pointed out in my last video, which was a breakdown of the fight, it was kind of expected since Eddie was already planting the seed all week, mainly during that exchange with Crawford when he brought up Bud's 2014 bout against Ricky Burns. And when Madrimov was politicking during the press conference about how he just wants a fair fight from the ref and judges, it already appeared to me that Team Madrimov expected the fight to go the distance, and I said they would try to be the aggressor going down the stretch in order to get a decision in the champ's favor. But I'm going to tell you why Crawford won the fight more so than why Madrimov lost the fight, or even vice versa. It's simply because Terrence Bud Crawford opened and closed the fight. Look, I don't know what Chris Mannix had going on in his scorecard, but him and Sergio Mora might as well be sharing glasses with Stevie Wonder, because there's no way Madrimov won the first 2 rounds, and there's no way Crawford got the 10th round, a round that Madrimov indeed won. I understand what a swing round is, and I get that they are hard to score, but it's pretty clear to me that although Bud threw more punches than he landed in the opening rounds, Crawford controlled the first 2 to 3 rounds of the bout. I mean, Madrimov was there. He definitely was working on a home for that right hand, and he was game, but all my mans was really doing was feigning and searching for a rhythm. His volume and work rate were very low offensively in those early rounds, to where Crawford was the more active of the two and dictated the pace of the fight. Not judging Madrimov's strategy, because it registered quickly for me why Madrimov took the approach he did if you watch any of his other fights. Unfortunately for the ones doing commentary, they didn't, but you know, whatever. The guy has always been very patient and likes to play chess until he finds enough rhythm to go high speed. This is why we started to see a snowball effect and an accumulation of Crawford eating those pot shots of right hands as the round started to progress more. But Madrimov's strategy brings me back to something Sean Porter said during the broadcast when Andre Ward was up there at the podium. Ward said his take on the fight was that Crawford would struggle a bit early with Madrimov's awkwardness and ultimately figure him out around the 9th round to get a stoppage, with Sean Porter agreeing to that, in which they were both wrong, since the complete opposite of that actually happened. But Sean Porter quickly reneged by saying if Madrimov comes out more aggressive in the early rounds, he could see it being a long night for Bud. And guess what? Porter was right. Because the hard truth here is, if Israel Madrimov was actually aggressive in the early rounds, he could have won this fight. But it defeats its purpose, being that he wasn't, and also allowed Crawford to take the last 2 championship rounds as well. If Madrimov opens and closes this fight the way Bud did, he wins this fight as the champion, no question. The only way he doesn't is if Crawford takes every round from rounds 3 to 10, which in Madrimov's case, when the shoe was on the other foot, Madrimov didn't do that. He did not. Add that in with the fact that there were a lot of swing rounds midway through, how Crawford's body work was being overlooked, and it's not hard to see why most would have it Crawford 8-4 or 7-5. This fight not only gave me Tank vs. Pitbull vibes, but also Oscar vs. Floyd and Canelo vs. Triple G1 as well. Now I had this 116-112 for Crawford and could see how someone could have it 115-113 for Bud, but there was no rivalry or real controversy here. And as you can see, Madrimov was humble in defeat because I'm sure Madrimov knows. Like he said, he went the distance with the best pound-for-pound boxer in the sport of boxing today. It was a great fight, man. It really was. No reason for Madrimov to hang his head at all because he fought his heart out and showed the world that he belonged in the ring with the best the sport has to offer. I mean, I wasn't shocked. I knew Madrimov was a tricky fighter with a style that could make Crawford very uncomfortable in there. And if you haven't noticed by now, that light resume of Madrimov's doesn't tell the full story about who he is. Because if you thought and still think this Madrimov is a walk in the park for anybody, let's put him in there with Charlo. Let's put him in there with Tim Tszyu, Sebastian Fondora and those boys, and let's just see if it was really Terrence Bud Crawford who struggled or if it's Israel Madrimov who is just a force to be reckoned with at a weight class where he can actually say he was a champion. You can bet your ass everyone will be lining up to see this guy face the likes of any of that other opposition, and it goes without saying because in my honest, humble opinion, if Crawford and Madrimov were to have a rematch, I believe Madrimov displays an even better performance in a rematch against Crawford than he displayed the first time around. Simply because he would learn from his mistakes, and like I said, if Madrimov opens and closes, we're talking about a totally different outcome here. Hey, I really believe it, because again, styles make fights. All I know is that Bud better stay clear of 168 because that's no place for him, and he doesn't want to see Canelo Alvarez there or even at a catchweight at 165. Now 160 may just be a different story and could make that matchup a bit more interesting after this, but we already know, according to Canelo, he can't make 160 anymore. I'll just save all that for another time though, because at this point, Terrence Bud Crawford's focus should be on the guy I said was the dark horse between him and Jerron Boots Ennis, a guy Turki Al-Sheikh proposed could be Crawford's next opponent if Canelo doesn't happen, a guy who fights next weekend in Las Vegas. You might have heard of him, his name is Virgil Ortiz Jr. To me, that's who Crawford should be looking to face next. And although I think that would be a great action-packed fight for us fans, unfortunately, I feel like we'll be seeing Crawford versus Charlo next. I'm sure everyone saw this recent IG post from Charlo, and coincidentally, it was posted a week before Crawford took the ring with Israel Madrimov. So I take that as a hint from one half of Lions Only that a message was clearly being sent here, and Crawford was also recently vocal that he's still interested in a fight with Charlo. It's not hard to see where this is headed. Guess we'll see what's to come of the future endeavors for your two-time undisputed 4-weight division and new WBA Super Welterweight champ. Pop off.